I said, okay, well, let's see what happens here. And I gave it a whirl and I refused to recruit because that's not me. And then I found a training that she did that is still on YouTube for this new company talking about how her warm markets are people in recovery and grieving moms. And that's who she targets. Because people need to look at all of that. If I just do a pro con list, it doesn't actually dig into what do I get for doing this? Like, what are my emotional consequences for doing this, positive or negative? But what we don't understand is that there's this huge grief process inherent with leaving a coercive control group. Steps of closure that I can work through in order to feel okay with what happened. And hopefully not try to solve my MLM problem with a new MLM, because that's what tends to happen. In addition to women who want to have more, who want to do more, who want to contribute that. And then when we're talking about the way they recruit men, it's that bro culture, right? Like, you're not enough of a man unless you're able to do this for your family. And like, that's why we're seeing these coaching pyramid schemes, because the mirroring is there. It's no different than any other abusive relationship. And it's not uncommon in cults for the cult leader to love bomb you, love bomb you, love bomb you, to earn the right to then yell at you. And that usually is because that's something they've heard a lot of their lives. It's all shame and guilt, and understanding that I'm still smart. I'm still a good human being. I'm going to show you that life can look different if you want it to look different.
We have a special guest today. She has been creating great content for some time now. She's very active on TikTok, always using her experience to help MLM reps with their questions. She also created the workbook, Cutting Ties, Healing After MLM, which has become such an essential healing tool. She is a licensed professional counselor. I'm thrilled beyond words to introduce you all to the one and only Megan Williams. Yay!
Thank you. Yay! Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It's been a while since I've talked about kind of even my journey into this world and the workbook as it stands. Yeah, I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Arizona. I have proven that I am competent and safe enough to practice independently. I supervise other people to get their licensure. I've been in the behavioral health field for about 20 years, licensed for about 18 of that. I have a background in criminology. I have a degree in criminal behavior study, which is part of where this kind of comes in for me, is understanding some of the personality dynamics and things that people utilize inside of multi-level marketing that are in line with some of the other stuff that I've learned about, criminal behavior over the years. I currently work with folks that are coming out of prison and helping them get their lives together. I've been all over the board with my career, and yeah, I put together a workbook because I saw a need. There was a gap in there a couple of years ago. We had a lot of folks that were leaving on the back end of LuLaRich, when LuLaRich aired. There were a lot of folks leaving multi-level marketing, and they just didn't have anything to help them process through their time, to fully understand what was happening to them, or to even make the decision to leave in the first place. And so I went ahead and put this together based off of my expertise as a trauma and grief related therapist, to kind of help folks just sort through what was going on. And I really felt like it was something that was needed. Part of my content creation is around making some of the tools from the workbook available for free in videos and some of the education around it. And that's just kind of where I'm at with that today. And I love being a part of the movement and helping people understand that they deserve better than multi-level marketing.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody deserves better than multi-level marketing. That's for sure. Were you ever in a multi-level marketing company or companies in the past?
So yes, I was a part of a makeup multi-level marketing company called Senegence. Senegence isn't talked about too terribly much in the anti-MLM world. Josie, Not the Good Girl on YouTube, she talked about Senegence for a while because that's the MLM that she was in. She doesn't really name it a whole lot, but I know, because I know. Had never really understood or known what multi-level marketing was before I got recruited in. It just wasn't part of my experience, which seems very odd because I grew up in Ohio, which is one of the multi-level marketing hotspots. I didn't know anything about it. And as I got into the movement and I learned more about some of the things that would happen that were technically like grooming behaviors from some of the old school multi-level marketing companies, I'm like, oh, I had MLM as a part of my life through products that my mother had purchased, but I never really knew what that was because my mom was never in one or did like did parties or anything like that. But yeah, I got recruited into Senegence from a woman who used a lot of affinity fraud with me. She is open about the fact that she uses 12-step fellowships to recruit. And that's where she recruited me. She recruited me out of a 12-step fellowship meeting where I had shared something about some financial issues that my family was going through at the time. And she used that as my pain point in order to try to bring me into this company. I had never even tried the products. When I first denied her, like when she asked me to sign up, I first denied her. She didn't even offer to try, like hadn't even tried the product. She only came at me with the opportunity. which I found very interesting. And I kept saying no, and I kept saying no. And then later on, she came at me again, and it just hit at just the wrong moment, however you want to look at it. And I said, okay, well, let's see what happens here. And I gave it a whirl, and I refused to recruit because that's not me. And I tried to make a decent amount of money off of selling some of the products. I liked some of the products, but it was very odd for me to be selling makeup because I worked at a facility that was all men. So like I didn't even wear makeup every day. I went to work plain face, messy bun, not looking real attractive, because the last thing I want to do is make it look like I'm trying to attract a male client, because ew, that's gross. And like very few female coworkers even to try to sell to. Like it was completely ridiculous. I sold products for a little bit. I'm one of the luckier ones, and it came about even with my overall costs when I did my full profit and loss statement. It came about even. I made just a little bit more than what I spent, but I was in, and then I got kind of out because it wasn't doing anything for me, because I had a career. I had a professional career. Like I didn't have, this was supposed to be a side thing. I didn't go to conventions. I didn't go to the trainings because they were an hour away, because Phoenix is huge. I live in Phoenix. Phoenix is huge. They were on the other end of town. I had a small child. Like I didn't have time for that business. I wasn't really included in the cool kids club. I sold what I could. I'm like, I'm good. I'm not front loading the way that other people are. I was not. And I started to get out. And then my recruiter left. She left and went to another multi-level marketing company, and she took most of her downline with her. But I found out that she left through her upline, who outreached all of us on her team. That woman was completely different. She was completely different. She was super sweet. She's very nice. She and I are still connected on social media. Like I have no beef with her. I wish she would get out, but that's her story and her journey, and I'm not here to tell her what to do. But she was just like, yeah, like if you just want to sell products, just sell products. If you just want to keep the discount, just keep the discount. Like I'm not here to pressure you into doing anything or being anything. And so I gave it a whirl for like another year, around 2020-ish, like in that realm where we were all kind of freaking out about money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's just see. You know, over the time, there were a couple of people that signed up underneath me to get the discount, never did anything else with it. Kidnappers, it was fine. And then it just kind of tapered out because I did a true profit and loss. I was having some issues with shipping, because in that company, you have to sell a certain amount to get pushed to the front of the line for shipping. And if you don't sell that certain amount, then it could take forever for your order to get shipped, because all these people then take your place in line.
Oh.
Yeah, you get preferred shipping if you buy a certain amount. I wasn't ordering at that level. And even if I was, it was still taking just as long, because it's 2020, right? Everything was taking forever. I had a couple of disgruntled customers that were they were my old uplines customers who came to me. I don't deal well with people that are pushy and weird and want to treat people they know like crap in those types of situations.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm good. I'm done. I'm out. And I started to kind of see how the woman that had initially recruited me was now treating me, now that she was in this other multi-level marketing company. Because I'd outreached her, because, you know, closed circuit. So I'd outreached her to have a party for her new company, because I was actually interested in those products. And she said, oh, yeah, no problem. And then never happened. I actually ended up having a party for that company with somebody else, because she wouldn't get back to me. I'm like, that's cool, because we're supposed to be friends, right? We're supposed to be friends. So weird. Because we knew each other before this happened. Affinity fraud is real, and it's raw, and it's gross. And then all of a sudden she moved out of state, and she picked up and moved out of state. And it was kind of like, okay, well, that's cool. Like, you do you, boo. Like, I never tell anybody how to live their life. But I watched the way that she had treated people in other arenas of her life when she left. And then I found out from some other people through social media and through conversation that she had been actively recruiting inside of 12-step fellowships all over the place. And then I found a training that she did that is still on YouTube for this new company, talking about how her warm markets are people in recovery and grieving moms. And that's who she targets. And I'm like, I'm done. This is gross. And then I was in an anti-MLM Facebook group, and I responded to something, and up popped underneath my comment, but Roberta Blevins. And she had just started her podcast, and she was like, hey, I'm looking for people that want to come and tell their story on my podcast, blah, 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 blah. I was a two-parter when I first went on her podcast, because I had so much to talk about. Yeah. And it was such a short period of time in the industry. I had a lot to talk about. And then I was one of the first people to be on her show twice. She had me back on when a workbook came out. She and I, connected as more than just, colleagues in this thing. And yeah, and it's just been really cool to evolve into something different off of a really terrible experience. And I started speaking out because I want to protect people who are in recovery, especially people who are in early recovery, who are still chaotic and twirly in their own thought process. They don't deserve to be predated on. So I started talking because I didn't want people to have the same thing happen to them that happened to me.
One of the things that I like the most about your workbook is that I guess when I purchased it, I was like, okay, so it's probably a workbook for people that left their MLM, right? People that already made the decision and left and whatever. But I started checking it out. This is even for people, they're starting to question if it's a good idea to be in the MLM. So can you please explain a little bit about that? I wanted to be clear that the book is not only for people that left the MLM.
Yeah, one of the things that I recognized was the steps that I needed to take in order to get out. So I work a lot with folks who have substance use disorders, and there's a model of change called the trans theoretical model. And it's what we call the stages of change. And it's how people walk through their change process. And whenever we're making any kind of change, the first place that we're at is what's called pre-contemplation. And that's where, like, I'm not thinking about making a change. I don't think there's any problem with my behavior or what's happening with me. And I'm good, right? I'm good. And this is like, if you're thinking about dieting, or, we're living our life and like, I don't need to change the way that I eat. It's fine. That, right? And then something happens. We call it a crisis moment, but crisis doesn't necessarily mean something bad. Something happens and it shakes up that thought process. And it's that cognitive dissonance opening when we think about multi-level marketing. And then we move into what's called contemplation. And that's when we start thinking about making the change. For some folks, that thought process is short. It's very quick. Like, I got to make this change. This is what I'm going to do. But for some folks, it takes a minute, right? I've developed the first part of the workbook for folks that may be in that contemplative stage, or they may be like, yes, I want to get out, but aren't sure how. So I built in exercises to help folks get to the place where they feel okay with making the decision to walk away from this. However that process looks, it doesn't have to be instantaneous. There's a way to kind of account for hidden costs that people don't think about in their profit and loss, like childcare, gas, how am I storing these things, space in my house, because that's an actual write-off on your taxes. So that's considered a tangible cost. We look at things like photography. If you have professional photos taken, if you have to buy stock photos from somewhere, the shipping costs, the packaging for your shipping costs, sales tax that you have to pay out that a lot of people don't, and then they get screwed at the end, right? And a lot of the things that MLMs will tell you are tax write-offs are not. They're just not. And so you have to eat those costs. Not to mention if you are taking time off work or taking time away, like your own time frame, and that's another exercise in there, is how to calculate your actual income, like your per hour income. But I started kind of with that. I have people look at what is your actual income once you've run that true profit and loss. How many hours are you really working on this a week? If you add up all those pockets of your time, what does that look like? There's a couple of exercises in there that talks about just the decision-making process. One of my favorite ones is it's an expansion on the old pro-con list. It's called a decisional balance tool. And what it does is it actually has 4 different pockets. And it talks about the benefits of change, the costs of change, the benefits of staying the same, and the costs of staying the same. Because people need to look at all of that. If I just do a pro-con list, it doesn't actually dig into what do I get for doing this? Like, what are my emotional consequences for doing this, positive or negative? What do I lose? And having that is one of the biggest things, I think, when we look at how if we're going to make this type of change, because if I'm going to lose my entire community, if I'm going to lose relationships with family because of leaving, that may keep me in. And I need to be okay with that. I need to be okay with those consequences outweighing the benefits of leaving, right? And for some of us, in the other column, it's that we damaged relationships that were, while we were in, that were important to us. And that may be the reason why we leave. So it's just putting all that stuff out there and really looking at, is it time? And at the end of that, and I talk about the change process and how that works for folks. And at the end of that section, I'm like, hey, if you're not ready to leave, cool. Put the workbook away. You can come back to it when you're ready to leave, or you can keep going, because the rest of it may also influence people to want to leave. I've had folks who have left who've done that front section either as they would have had in the same mind frame then, or even looking back at it now for why they made that change. And they're like, whoa, I didn't even think about some of these hidden costs when I got out, or I didn't really sit and do my hourly wage calculation, or I didn't realize what the benefit was of me leaving or what was keeping me in. And that piece is really powerful too, because we don't always fully understand the anchors that keep us weighed in and that sunk cost fallacy until it's sitting right in front of us in black and white.
Yeah, and when you put things like in front of you, those things are not haters,
Right.
It's pretty much just facts. This is what it's going to cost me to continue. This is what it's going to cost me to leave. It's facts.
When you can look at it in that way, it's just information. Like, I ask about, how are you feeling about this decision? How are you feeling about thinking about this? How are you, what are the things you got from, like, the benefits that you got? Because I have an aunt who did Mary Kay for a while. And she gained a lot of confidence, and she learned how to talk to strangers and develop some of her sales persona that has helped her continue to be successful in life 100%. But she got it working as a rep for Mary Kay. We don't lose that stuff just because we get out, right? We don't go back to being who we were before. So sometimes being in MLMs do change us for the better. But we have to kind of dig for that too sometimes. Because I think we get caught up in our cringy behaviors and the guilt and the shame and the remorse of all the gross things that we did, that we forget that, you know, some of the stuff, like for me, one of the biggest benefits of having been in a multi-level marketing company, number one, is being educated on what those things were. Like I had no idea. I had no idea how many people it impacted, right? And then on top of it, I've been able to meet some amazing people who've gotten out and who are working really, really hard to help other people get out, like way harder than I'm working at this point. But like you and Roberta and Michelle Carpenter and Julie Anderson and Brandy, like all of these people who are trying to help other people see, right? I get to meet those really cool, amazing individuals. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like anytime I'm in the room with a bunch of really cool people, virtually or otherwise, I'm like, this is freaking awesome.
Yeah, I think everybody who is part of the anti-MLM movement, we understand that everybody has their own lives. Either they put a little bit of content here and there, or if they're more active. Everybody's in the anti-MLM movement. I think it's so powerful because I've seen people make such a big impact with just their voice. I reach out to you, hey, I have this on my mind for so many years now, and you were able to create an awesome article that I think it's a little bit similar to what we can find in the workbook about the process of healing. Can you tell me a little bit about that article?
In the back parts of the workbook, I go through the bite model. I break it down into like different categories, so it's a little more palatable to understand, like the coercive control that's utilized. But part of the healing process, whenever we have something that comes to an end in our lives, whether it's good or bad, we go through a grief process. And people don't realize that. We talk about grief in terms of loss of a human, a pet, like those kind of things, a loss of a major sporting event, whatever. We talk about grief in terms of those things. But what we don't understand is that there's this huge grief process inherent with leaving a coercive control group. And there's this big piece of like identity loss that we walk through, in addition to potential relationship loss, the loss of who we thought we were, the loss of an imagined future, the loss of a dream. All of those things are grief processes that are layered into leaving a multi-level marketing company. And the first piece is that we have to accept that those losses happened. I see a lot of folks who come out that they're pissed off. Guess what? Anger is one of the stages of grief. It's a thing, right? And they get angry because anger masks pain. Anger allows us to not have to fully feel the pain. It also is an indicator that I understand that I deserved better in a trauma situation. And this is a trauma situation. So the article that I put together is some of the material from the workbook in terms of what does that grief process look like, and how can I work to get closure for my decision to leave this company, or the decision that the company had to cut me, because we're seeing a lot of that now too, right? A lot of the companies are shutting down, eliminating their reps and only going to a product-based model, or, you know, with the case of like Monet, they're canning people, they're canceling their contracts left and right. So whether it's my choice or somebody else's choice, there's these steps of closure that I can work through in order to feel okay with what happened, and hopefully not try to solve my MLM problem with a new MLM. Because that's what tends to happen, is that because the grieving process leaves this big hole, and then we don't fill it with anything. And so it makes us more vulnerable to pull another MLM in, because this one's going to be different. I'm different this time, or this product is better aligned with what I can do, or, you know, nobody else has heard of it, so I'm not going to have an oversaturated market, or the owner seems so much nicer, but they're not. They're still condescending. They're still.
I'll say it.
They're still condescending scammers who create this false mother, father, care about you persona. I was on a call once with the founder of Senegens. Our team won a free training call with this woman, and she was so condescending and just rude, and like she just kept reapplying powder on her face for the hour. I'm like, what? How much powder do you need, woman? Like, you can't dust away, you dusty. You're just dusty. Like, I don't know what you're doing. But she was so condescending in the way that she would call on us, and she would say our names. Like, I'm like, ew, this is gross. Like, you're gross. Like, as a human being, you just feel gross. And I had heard so much about how amazing Joni was. She's so great. She's so great. I'm like, I didn't see any of that. I saw a woman that I probably would have punched in the face if, you know, I'd seen her on the street and she talked to me like that. Maybe not. I don't do that anymore. But when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have put up with a lot of that. For the article, I just put in like, these are some of the steps that we all have to take to heal what happened to us. And we need to give ourselves time to process what we walked through, because just jumping right back into something else isn't going to get it done. It didn't get it done in the first place. And this is where you see all these people that do serial MLMs, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, because they haven't stopped to process what happened to them and make informed consent about walking into the next one. Because what we know about people who experience any kind of trauma and abuse is that it makes them more vulnerable to more trauma and abuse.
I remember one day I was, just scrolling. There was this quote or something that said that whenever you're like raising your children, they've been treated with respect and validated and etc. growing up. So it will immediately raise a red flag for them whenever somebody treats them incorrectly. And that just made me wonder, can you imagine all the people that are involved in MLMs, the background that they had to have in order to not recognize that pattern of abusive behavior? Oh.
Well, we have to remember that multi-level marketing comes wrapped up as the cure-all for whatever problem you have, right? We talk about isolation. There's a lot of reps that get signed up because they're isolated in this day and age, especially in this economy where one paycheck, one salary isn't getting it done. And you have, again, that false feminist thought process of, when you're a mother, that's, you got to do more. You got to be more. Women are supposed to be more. Well, no, we're not. We're doing a full-time job, sometimes 5 full-time jobs if we're a stay-at-home parent. They know what they're doing. And this is why I go back to that anatomy of the scam and understanding that the people who create multi-level marketing companies they're just scam artists. They're criminals, because they are teaching people to identify a pain point and then manipulate that pain point. Predators know how to find prey. They know. It's one of those things where, and I talked to a lot of my sexual assault trauma survivors about the fact that, like, once you've had this type of victimization happen to you once, there's like this beacon that lives in you, like the Care Bear belly, right? There's this beacon inside of you that other predators can see. They can see it. And it chips away every time that something like that happens to you. Every time you have certain types of trauma and abuse, it chips away at who you are until somebody else can get a crack in and like fill that hole with whatever it is that they think that you might need. This is how abusive relationships become possible, is that idea that they see that vulnerability and they're going to take advantage of it. And MLMs are training people how to be predators. So even if you started off as the prey, they're going to teach you how to be a predator, right? And the people at the top are the apex predators, right? They're the top predators. And when you look at it from that perspective, the whole system is just sick. It's just sick. Like, yes, all sales is based off of a pain point and how I'm going to make this happen, but it's multiplied in multi-level marketing because they're taking these already misogynistic ideas, especially about women and who women are supposed to be, and the fear of aging, and we have no value unless we are this weird ideal of like the size 2 princess who always has perfect hair and makeup and doesn't look like she's aged past 22. Like, it's a societal thing that they have been able to like really take hold of and target, in addition to women who want to have more, who want to do more, who want to contribute. And they twist that. And then when we're talking about the way they recruit men, it's that bro culture, right? Like, you're not enough of a man unless you're able to do this for your family. And like, they play on that and pull that kind of weird misogyny. And it's fascinating, the psychological tactics that they use. Most of them use what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Tony Robbins is like the king of NLP. NLP is a debunked therapy technique that was used. Essentially, it's manipulation. All it is getting somebody to think what you think through tactics that use mirroring, which is something we do as human beings anyway. We mirror each other. So if somebody's walking down the street and you're not a person that says hello, right? You're like, don't look at me, don't talk to me person. But if somebody says hello to you, you're going to say hello back. Mirroring, right? It's what we do to kids, right? So when my daughter asks for something and she doesn't say please, I'm like, please. And then she says, please. Mirroring, okay? All NLP does is create mirroring. You need to do what I do to get the results that I had. Well, if I'm really doing what you did, I got in early enough. Like, I'm in the top 10 reps, and then I'll have what you have. But that's all it is. And that's why it's that replication of do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, the success formula. And that's why we're seeing these coaching pyramid schemes, because the mirroring is there. And they're preying on that pain point of I'm a failure, right? I failed. So now I'm going to teach you how to not be a failure. Guess what? You're still going to be a failure. because that's the way the pyramid is built for you to be a failure so they can succeed and take all of your money. They're grifters, and grifters going to grift. And they're really good at finding somebody who's vulnerable. Look for that vulnerability. Let's play on that and see what happens. It's no different than any other abusive relationship. And it's not uncommon in cults for the cult leader to love bomb you, love bomb you, love bomb you, to earn the right to then yell at you. But what happens is that all the people that are there are like, oh my gosh, I did something wrong. I'm wrong. I am wrong. Because look, this guy that I have up on this pedestal is yelling at me because I'm not doing it right. So something about me is inherently wrong. And that usually is because that's something they've heard a lot of their lives. What's comfortable and familiar is not always safe. But we get drawn to it all the time because it's comfortable. I know how to act in these situations. I know who to be in these situations. And the other thing that's really fascinating is the amount of neurodivergent people who have had to mask that can go in and out of these types of companies and be berated and become whoever they want them to be because they're just so used to wearing the masks that other people make them wear that they don't even realize that they're being abused until they're done.
That is the saddest part because nobody deserves it. Nobody deserves.
Nobody. Not at all. There's always that undying hope. And I think that that's a piece that those of us that come from the compassion base have, is our goal is to expose all of these things, not because we want to hurt people, but because we have hope that the folks that have been caught up in this will move away from it and become somebody different, right? And especially young people, well, people younger than me. I guess a lot of folks, you know, I'm young, but like I'm in my 40s and I see these folks in their 20s and their 30s and I'm like, dude, like it's okay to not care so much about what people think of you. Like at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Right?
Exactly.
And if I'm coming at it from humor and like, let's laugh at ourselves or like, hey, I did this too, like, and it's not who I am anymore, I think that's important. It's the same way I approach people that are trying to get into some kind of mental health or substance use recovery. I'm gonna plant seeds. I'm going to show you that life can look different if you want it to look different. And I think that's really important because a lot of the online forums that you find, the anger and the snark is real. And a lot of folks be like, how could you be so dumb? I'm like, well, technically cults try to recruit smart people because they need smart people to run the cult, number one. Number two, multi-level marketing cult scams will target professionals to give themselves false legitimacy. That's a real thing. They need to have, look, we have a doctor. Hey, we can't be wrong. Hey, look, we have a lawyer. We can't be wrong, right? It's one that you see a lot with like the service-based multi-level marketing companies like Primerica and the legal one. I can't remember what they changed their name to after Jodi Arias got convicted.
Your best friends, Primerica, that they're on your comments on TikTok every
They were on my old TikTok. Like I had to get rid of my old TikTok. But yeah, Primerica was always in my comments and they were always saying the same thing. I'm like, bro, you're saying the exact same thing that this guy over here said and you want to tell me how they're not indoctrinating you and conditioning y'all because you don't know each other, but you're saying the same thing. The exact same. Yeah. And it's funny because they'll come at you and I'm like, I'm just taking this directly off of the Primerica website. The biggest hate that I got on Primerica was when I did the history of Primerica, how it came into being. Legal Shield, that's what it is, because they own them now.
Yeah.
I just did the history of it and the history of the owner. And the fact that like in the video I talk about how I'm pissed off that he used to own a hockey team and now I can never like that hockey team because he owned them. But that was the biggest hate I got was this is like, I'm just talking about the history of your company that is all on your website. Like it's not even hidden information. And then when I quote their income disclosure, which is a crap income disclosure, by the way, it's just like, this is the average amount of money that somebody makes with Primerica every year. And they just have one figure in there. And it's not a good figure. It's like less than 10 grand a year. Real insurance salespeople make more than 10 grand a year. Just saying. Right?
For sure.
I got connected to a woman who is an actual legitimate insurance salesperson. She was always going in and debunking everything they were saying. And I'd tag her. I'd be like, I need you. But like like they are so culty. They are one of the worst when it comes to cult tactics. And I think part of it too is because it's a lot of guys and young men. And young men have this phenomenon as part of who they are as human beings. And this is me drawing from my education so people can like be all mad. But young men come from this invincibility place, especially before they're 25. Our brains don't solidify until we're 25. So until then, we are extremely impulsive. We have problems with problem solving. Like we don't engage our prefrontal cortex for all of this logical processing at the level we do after 25. It is science. People can argue with me all day long, but that's the truth. So you have these younger guys that are under 25 that don't want to go to college, which is legit, right? I'm cool with that. But now they're getting caught up in these get rich quick schemes of Primerica because they're invincible and I can do this and this is great. And like the hubris that comes with youth. And I'm like, no, you're not. You don't know enough people that can A, afford life insurance, or B, will need it other than your parents. Go home and sit down. Like, It's also why vector marketing and Cutco target young adults, because the hubris of youth. I don't want to actually have to work, because kids, like boomer mentality, I'm a Gen Xer, like Gen Xer mentality. The kids these days don't want to work. Well, no, I didn't want to work when I was a kid either. I wanted to have fun. Like, I think we forget that. When I was in my 20s, I did not want to work. I did, because I was in college and I needed to supply my party money. But did you want to work when you were in your 20s? No, nobody wants to work when they're in their 20s, because you're still a child. Your brain is still a child until you're 25, and we force people to be an adult at 18. Like, that makes zero sense. Absolute zero sense. But yeah, I'm like, of course they don't want to work. And of course they're going to fall prey to these get rich quick schemes, because they don't want to spend a lot of time trying to make money, because they want to be out and living their lives, because now they have all this freedom that comes with being a person in your 20s, especially if you're not married and you don't have kids. You want to go live your life now that you're not obligated to school, if you're not obligated to school. And it's just, it's so interesting the way that they do this and the way they target, and they're very intentional. They are very intentional. And that's the thing, that they found a strategy that works with that. And that's why they keep doing it, because it works for them. And 18-year-olds are very impulsive. I can get a credit card, cool, sign me up for a credit card. You forget you got to pay that thing, right? And that the interest rate is probably not worth it at that juncture. You're paying like 30-something% on $100 purchase. Now you're paying $30 extra on something that was only $100. Like, that's not smart. So they make not great decisions.
Yeah.
Great decisions. That's why they're great for targets. And you throw in a product that's not absolutely terrible. Like, I know people that have Cutco knives. They're not terrible knives, but
It's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, I believe Avon and Mary Kay both had teen programs, and you can sign up under 18. If you're 18, you have a social security number and a pulse and a sign-up fee, they don't care. And that's what's funny when they want to present themselves. We're going to do interviews. No, you're not. But you also then have to admire the genius that is Amway, because they catch you in a store and they're talking to you, and they don't tell you it's Amway, right? They don't tell you that until like I think it's 2 or 3 touches like into the conversation, like 2 or 3 times before they tell you that it's Amway. Because A, they don't want you researching it, but B, they're going to talk to you in person, because you're not going to sit there on your phone and look up what they're talking about while you're talking to somebody, because it's still rude, right? It happens, and that's how this works. It's a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, and then they got you. And it's I go through that in the workbook a little bit. The grooming tactics, the love bombing, the normalizing. I grew up with Avon catalogs in my home. Avon didn't become an MLM until 2005. However, the groundwork that they laid before, the fact that we call all plastic takeaway foodware Tupperware, like, come on, that's grooming, that's normalizing. That's making everything okay because, hey, it's a thing. It's a colloquial thing. Like, no, bro, it's insidious and it's gross.
It is. One of the things that I thought it was so interested in the book that I wanted to just read it real quick is a part where it reads, the toughest loss we experience as humans is one related to our identity and sense of self. Do you think that maybe this is the reason why a lot of people, whenever they leave their MLM, they struggle finding 100%. Themselves again?
Well, and here's the thing is that person was never lost. And that's why I have the exercises on value systems and how do I return to that, who I am as a person and what are good things about me. Because sometimes we lose our good person identity, right? I'm a good person. The majority of people that I have dealt with that have been in multi-level marketing, coming out of multi-level marketing, they're good people. They're great people. They're amazing people. But because I've been a part of this, and once I have my eyes open to it being a scam, I lose my good person identity. I lose my smart person identity, right? Because now I was stupid and I got scammed. And like, no, bro, like these two people are just really good at what they do. They are professional criminals. That's all they are. It asks us to go against our value systems. It asks us to, annoy our friends and family. It asks us to be sleazy and do sleazy things. And they call it getting out of your comfort zone, right? No, it's going against that ick that happens. It forces us to go against who we are as people. And we do it enough times because we're told that we're getting out of our comfort zone, that it erodes away at those people. And then we put on this mask, this new persona, the MLM persona. And we need to be okay with getting rid of that and knowing that it's okay to mourn MLM Megan, but we need to be okay with the fact that who I was before is still an amazing human being and that my experiences are just going to enhance who I was. But we also lose the identity of future self, right? If I envisioned myself as being successful and walking across the stage and getting the crown and doing the things, I have to mourn the loss of that potential identity as well. Sometimes we have to lose, we've lost our good mom identity or good parent identity, successful person identity, like all these pieces of who we think we are. it gets lost when we leave or when we find out what really happens. And we need to be okay with shedding some of that shame and guilt, because that's what it is. It's all shame and guilt, and understanding that I'm still smart. I'm still a good human being. I'm still a good parent. I'm doing the best I can with what I have and the information I have at the time. And now that I know better, I get to do better.
I think that's so important that you mentioned that, because in my DMs, I get a lot of people that come to me and that was this, like just insulting themselves. And that breaks my heart because they are judging themselves with the information that they now have, but they didn't have in the past. So it's really unfair for them to judge themselves because back then they didn't know what they know now, right? I want to thank you, Megan. If you wanted to talk about anything else.
If people want to connect, the workbook is available on Amazon. It's available in a hard copy, a paperback copy. It's also available on Kindle for folks that would prefer the Kindle version, and then you can keep your own notebook, however you want to type your notes or put your responses. It is important to write your responses somehow, whether it's typing it or actually handwriting it, because it is that black and white. It's kind of like an interactive journal. It's important to do that. But it is available on Amazon. I try to keep the cost reasonable because you are still paying for my expertise and my time and some of the costs that I had putting into publishing. If people want to connect with me on Instagram, there is a Cutting Ties Instagram. That's probably going to be the best way. And my TikTok is at Megan Zona Life. If you just search Megan Zona Life, you can find me. I'm not difficult to find in the world. I'm on YouTube is at Megan Zona Life. I have a couple of videos on there about my MLM journey. I have a couple of videos on there about trauma and grief and some other things that I've done in the course of my career, just have information out in the world. Obviously, I have an article on Gladys's website. You should check out her website if you have not. It's an amazing resource with all the things in one place that you could ever possibly need to help you understand what it's like to be in, what it's like to get out, and to be gentle with yourself in the process of moving through what just happened.
Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all that knowledge. I'm pretty sure it's going to be helpful for a lot of people that are listening. I hope we can do this again because I do have a lot more questions.
Absolutely. Anytime. You know that. Come on now.